take one at least once a week.
Also with it also depends on how you're doing in your other classes. Like you could be super good at math and then just completely fall apart in English. And when that happens, if you're doing struggling in your other classes, it kind of does relate to, even if you aren't in an accelerated math class, sometimes the workload seems more if you're doing poorer in other classes.
Also, if this makes you feel better, most of the math in 7th grade overlaps with the 6th grade, except you're just adding a little more to what you already know. So you aren't learning too many new things. It's in sort of when you're transitioning from 7th to 8th grade math, when you start learning new skills to solve problems and things like that. So it usually never is too accelerated, as you said before, because we are learning pretty much the same things, but we're just adding
more intense.
Another step to it.
Well, for me personally, it was actually pretty tricky for me. At the beginning of the year, we had Miss Twaidry, and she'd give us 2 lessons a day for homework too. So before, when we went to Miss Nieves, it was so simple. I knew most of the things, and it was a steady pace. But then when I got to Miss Twaidry's, it was a bit more on the workload, so it felt like a lot more personally to me. But then eventually, you just gotta get a steady pace of yourself, and then it becomes pretty simple.
To add to what Athena was saying, with Miss Twaidry's class, we were having the everyday class, but then we were having 2 lessons a night in that class, so it was, very stressful because it was a big.
I think you guys also set aside special time to do big projects also, which was pretty cool. So they wanted to make sure they had enough time for that.
So I'm just wondering how many, I had a question about the retakes. So does everybody in the class do retakes? And if so, does that mean everybody in the class ends up with an A?
I would say any girl that is getting, most girls I would say that score below a 3.25 on their assessments come in for a retake. And I give mostly A's. I'm not afraid to say that.
How many times
in that
can
class
a kid do a retake? How many
they can do it as many times as long as they're showing me they're improving. However, I do warn the girls that if they come in and do a retake and they're not prepared and they do worse on it, that still goes in the grade book. So, but it's as many times as long as they're showing that they're continuing to improve.
So let me interject on the retake thing because there's some misconceptions out there. The whole idea of standards-based grading is that we want the girls to meet every standard in their class. So the retake is not to get a better grade. It's to prove that you know the standard. That does translate into a better grade, but so what happens sometimes is girls take a test in class, they come the same day to take the test, and the teachers are like, no, you haven't had the time to learn the standard and learn the mistakes you made in the first test.
Yeah.
So what they're supposed to do is take that first test, go through it, and see what are the areas they have deficits in or they're having problems with. Go back in the book, work with the teacher in office hours. It's the whole point of office hours to kind of redo those problems, re-understand them. And then they can take a retest to say, yes, I can prove to you that I know these standards. So I know there's that misconception out there, and I just want to interject that it's not about getting a better grade. It's about showing that you know the standard, and that's so important in middle school because once they hit high school and they hit the pre-calc and the calculus and the statistics, if they don't have these fundamentals, that's where they're really going to fall apart. So it's very, very important that everyone understands that it's about learning the standards, not about getting a better grade. Grade, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, grades absolutely don't matter for middle school in terms of your future in graduating from high school and going to college. It just doesn't matter. I mean, it matters in terms of how you feel about yourself and that you've mastered the standards and that kind of thing, but it didn't go.
Do we have any more questions specifically for the girls, or can we send them off?
I just have one quick question. So this year, the 2 periods of math, was that extra period in place of an elective or another academic?
It was in place of Spanish.
Okay, so thinking if you were to have another academic course, since next year they'll only have 1 period of math, and I'm assuming they'll take Spanish next year.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them take it in 7th
you
period.
can take it for 7th period, and I think she mentioned for the ASL class if No?
After
Okay.
school.
Anyways, after school. So, and that counts, I think. So you can take, if your student is taking accelerated math, she will be having Spanish. So you won't have to worry about that because you're going to have
You'll
it
have it your workload.
every single day. What?
You can have your workload more.
Because Spanish.
Yeah.
No, not necessarily, because
Please
most of it
excuse
is
the interruption.
studying.
Teachers, we will be using the copying machine for the next hour. We do not use the copier. Thank you.
So next year, then they'll
Next
have,
year they can take
they could have
Spanish, yes.
accelerated math, Spanish plus an elective.
Oh, okay.
Specifically for the students? Okay.
My question was, do you feel that there's like a pressure to take accelerated math, or sort of a feeling amongst the girls that if you're not in accelerated math, you're not smart, not in math?
Well, so to me, most of the pressure came from my parents because they're very strict on grades. So as soon as I gave them the letter that I could go into accelerated math, they signed it right away. So it's more of the pressure on my parents, but I personally think that we don't have that much arguing between accelerated math students and normal
I
math
think there was
students.
it was in the beginning. It was kind of like a stigma with it, but now I don't think I wouldn't say anymore. I think people have just realized that we're doing the same thing. It's not an advanced class; it's an accelerated class. I think people now understand that.
Like at first, some people did kind of feel bad, like, oh, I didn't get into that, And then afterwards, we're just learning that, like what Ella said, we are doing it.
The same thing.
The same exact thing. Like, they're still going to be able to learn it, just.
So another question to add on to that, what was your experience for anybody that you saw who had to step out of accelerated math and back to the standard math?
Did we have anyone?
Do we have
No, I don't think we did. This year, yeah, we didn't have anybody to step out.
So what would you put, then perhaps maybe that question?
Yeah, that question I can answer. Anything else for the girls, or can I send them? Because they have my class right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, go ahead. Miss Nieves will be in there. Okay, so I'm gonna let the girls step.
While they're stepping out, just to make it aware. So one of the reasons why we did make that change is because of that stigma issue last year. This year, it's more of when we learn, we're in school, we're learning things, and we change things. That's the good news. We learn from our mistakes, and that was, I feel like, and I think all the teachers feel like that was a big mistake last year, that we should have done what we're doing now. Having an open meeting, saying to parents, this is what to expect, saying to students, letting them know that we're going to talk to the students today as well, and tomorrow, Monday, and just kind of let them know what's going to be demanded of them, and have it be a choice, because that is the way we operate in our high school, and for us not to operate that way in our middle school, just it doesn't work. And it did cause a little bit of problems in the 7th grade that we're still kind of dealing with, to be very honest, and we'll continue to deal with it, and just try to make girls who were not invited into the class know they're just as good as anyone else. It's just that there are other girls that were quick. I mean, it's really about being quick or being able to do the hard work if you're not that quick. So, yeah, I think that.
So, yeah, like she said, we wanted it to be more like our high school AP environment. We don't require any sort of prerequisites for those girls to come in and take a class. The only prerequisite is, are you ready and are you willing to work? And that's the same mindset we wanted to have with these girls, which is why we are trimming it down to just the one class period, and potentially we might have more girls who think they are ready for accelerated. So we're prepared for that change that's going to happen. But we also, from my personal standpoint, like if I had, followed what my counselor told me not to take specific classes because they didn't think I was ready, like I wouldn't have gone into calculus my senior year like I did. So these girls know what they want. You know what you want for your girls. So why not let them make that decision? Start from the side and work this way.
Will you be teaching the 7th grade accelerated and the 8th grade accelerated next year?
We have not made any final decisions on who will be teaching it.
We're
we're still working on the master schedule and we're hiring for next year because we're going to need another math teacher.
So will there be a cap on the number of kids that can get into the accelerated math program? And if there are more kids who want to get in, how will those decisions be made as to who actually gets to be in the class?
We're not planning on capping it.
Right.
However, that we understand that there is going to be situations where maybe all 3 classes are accelerated. I don't know. Or it's going to be based on who signs up for it, so we know what numbers we have. So we really have to wait to see who's interested before we make that decision. But there is no plan to cap it.
We're anticipating more than one class. Right?
Yeah.
We're anticipating at least 2 classes of about 30 girls. So we're anticipating 60 if 100 girls will probably opt for accelerated. That may not be true. It may be 30, and then we'll just have we'll change it. It's just kind of, this is part of our development, is to find out from the families what they want, and then we'll adjust as much as we can the master schedule to make sure that everybody has a place that they are in. Continuing this direction.
I've heard other parents talking about, if you choose accelerated, you can't have Spanish or so. From administration, just so you know, that's going around, and I don't want other parents to be misinformed and miss out on an opportunity. And I'm not seeing those very parents that I've heard talking, so I have a feeling they've already shut the door, not understanding that indeed Spanish is an option.
Yes. So what's going to happen next year is they will have, every 7th grader will have the option for accelerated math or non. What happened this year is we did 2 periods of accelerated math, and that eliminated the Spanish. Next year, actually, our 7th grade will probably have music rather than Spanish, or they may have an option. So we will have more than one elective next year. So they can either take music or Spanish. And if, like I said, we're going to start the after school LA City College class for American Sign Language. So there's going to be several options for 7th and 8th grade in terms of how they take care of the language other than English.
Yeah, and I did have one quick question. Could you review, please, the strategy of taking accelerated math? What does that then lead to?
Right.
Why? I mean,
so on a typical schedule, I guess, a freshman would enter high school taking Algebra 1 after taking Common Core 6, 7, and 8. Taking Algebra 1 as a freshman would then lead to Geometry, Algebra 2, finishing your senior year with pre-calculus. A lot of schools, and because our girls want to go into STEM, are looking for them to take calculus, or specifically AP calculus, or maybe even AP stats, depending on what pathway they take. By accelerating the 7th and 8th grade class together, what it does is it gets them into Algebra 1 by 8th grade, and then continuing the pattern so that they can take AP calculus by senior year. And get that, not only that college credit, but that recognition that they are interested in a STEM field. You want to see that they've taken AP calculus.
So one of the other pathways, I know we've had in the letter that you got, there are other ways to make that happen. So if they end up starting with algebra in 9th grade, we have several of our girls that came from other middle schools, because they're, right now our high school girls are coming from other schools who had not taken the accelerated pathway. So some of them made the decision to take algebra and geometry at the same time in 9th grade. Some are planning on they're taking algebra now, they're going to take geometry in summer school. And then we are going to have a accelerated, math honors accelerated, I think, class in 11th grade that could allow them to kind of combine algebra 2 and pre-calc so that they can take AP calculus in their senior year. Really, if you're going into engineering, and a lot of the colleges are asking for anyone going into STEM to complete AP Calculus AB, and they can also go on to AP Calculus BC with the pathway that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I don't know if my daughter wants to be an engineer. She likes math. Like, what would be the main advantage to accelerating now as opposed to later, other than like not having to take summer school?
So,
are you nervous about it?
From my opinion, accelerating them now, because the standards repeat themselves so much, it's the easiest time to do it. Accelerating at a later point, though it's totally feasible, it's been done, I know a lot of people who have done it successfully, it turns into extra. So it turns into an extra summer school class, or some of our girls right now are taking 2 math classes in their schedule, and they're feeling that, especially at the sophomore and next year the junior level. 2 math classes in your schedule, especially the way we teach math here, can feel a lot. So from my opinion, the 7th grade class, because it overlaps so much and it's so similar, it makes sense to do it then. But it's not to heed those people who think, you know what, my girl's just not ready yet. Maybe they still need some of those middle school concepts really fine-tuned, and that's okay.
So what will happen to the 7th graders now who missed Spanish this year? What will happen for them next year?
So the 7th graders, only 4th grade for some of you who went here, but the 7th graders will go on to Spanish 2, the ones that take Spanish 1 this year, and the ones that have not will take Spanish 1. That's why we have less openings for the 7th grade to the rising 7th graders, the current 6th graders, to take Spanish, because we want to make sure that those girls that started get their 2nd year. And we also have kind of this weird segue where we are right now. Our pathways are 2 different pathways. So we have the one that's the girls that started in 6th grade that will go all the way through the 12th grade, and there's a very clear pathway. But we have also all the girls that are coming in from a variety of different middle schools into our high school. So some of them have maybe taken 1 year of Spanish, and some have taken none. And so we have to make sure, because that's a graduation requirement to have the 2 years, that they get that graduation requirement. So the priority right now for Spanish is the high school. And also because we're adding in the LA City College class after school for American Sign Language, they can also, if they haven't taken any language, they can take 2 years of that. That's kind of another option for particularly high school. It also will be opened up to 8th and possibly even down to 7th. But the one thing you need to be aware of on that is a transcript that follows, because it's a college transcript. So if they don't do well, it's not going to be great. So it's really something that I would, if they had just, I know there are girls that have talked to me, they just really want to learn American Sign Language. They've seen it. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful language. They want to know how to do it. And they're really motivated and they'll do all the work. That would be the kind of girl that I would say, hey, yeah, maybe in 7th grade you can take it, but probably better in 8th grade.
I just want to follow up on your comment when you said earlier too, that middle school grades don't count, which is great, except for Spanish 1 and 2 and algebra. And I wanted you to please explain in what way they count. So are they considered part of the high school GPA? Are they on the high school transcript? Because I have to tell you, I've actually heard conflicting information from my son's middle school, from high school principals, from college people. So clarification.
So the college counselor and the coordinator for all the counselors in the West area for 8 years, I know things. For language other than English, if you're taking it in middle school, it is going to count for your transcript for high school and for college. However, colleges, let's say someone which will have the option that they go to AP Spanish Language or AP Spanish Literature, if they take those 2 classes, that's more what they're going to look at than their Spanish 1 and 2. If they have a 3, 4, or 5 on one of those tests, that's going to be more indicative to a college that this is someone who's prepared for college. Because AP classes, their advanced placement classes are college level classes taught on a high school campus. It's a national curriculum, and there's a national test that everyone takes at the exact same time across the nation for these classes. And the score on that test, because it is a nationally designed test, helps colleges to kind of look at college preparation. So not only have they taken the class, but have they gotten a good score on their exam? That shows the college, okay, this child's ready for college. And that's kind of what they're looking at. And for STEM, I just had this conversation with a couple of parents from another school that doesn't have a STEM background, and they were told by colleges that colleges now are looking for kids that are prepared in STEM because that's the future. So a parent was bemoaning to me that they had not gone to a STEM school because they feel like that made it that they didn't get into, that their daughter didn't get into as many colleges as they would have liked because they didn't have that preparation, and that's what colleges are kind of looking for now.
So it is part of the Gala High School GPA. Algebra
It's
1.
on the
and
transcript.
It's on the transcript and
Yes.
it's part of the GPA.
Okay, because the other thing we heard was it doesn't count unless it's taken on a high school campus. I know Gala is a middle school and a high school. So, okay, and then lastly.
Wait, let me back up because I'm trying to remember now. I think the GPA is calculated not with middle school grades, you're correct.
Okay,
So the GPA itself is calculated with, I think it's just 10th and 11th, maybe 9th, 10th, and 11th.
And then
We'll have to
lastly,
clarify that.
okay,
We'll find out.
and lastly on the AP,
Uh-huh.
Again, we were told by other sources that colleges really don't count that unless it's taken in 10th grade or up. So if one of our girls took a Spanish AP class and an exam in 9th grade, scored a 5, yay, but the colleges don't really do anything with that. Does that?
I've never
heard that before.
Yeah.
There's some schools, and I think it's developmentally inappropriate for AP classes to be taught in a middle school. There are a couple of schools in LA that do that. It's just not where they're at developmentally, educationally, for like 99% of the kids. But in terms of colleges not counting us, they count every AP. And doesn't matter if they're doing it 9th or 12th. AP classes for a college's perspective, I've sat on some of the college admissions. Haven't been part of the college admissions process, but I've been part of the pre-admissions process where they're training us what we should look for. And APs are huge for them, and that's why we offer so many in high school, because they really want to see that kids are ready for that rigor. Because it's almost more rigorous, the AP courses, than when you actually get to college.
So for the American Sign Language class, is it every day after school, and is it offered to all grades?
It's an LA Community College class. So the teacher comes from LA Community College. It's only our girls. We're doing 2 classes right now. So we're doing an art history class we did last semester, and we're doing a drawing class this semester. The professor comes from the college. It's only our girls, and they take it usually 2 days a week from 3:30 to 5:30, 3:30 to 6. It depends on the class.
So the art class this year was only offered to high school. I believe, like she said before, the ASL plan would be 8th, potentially 7th and up. Yeah, depending on.
And so if they did go the American Sign Language path, they would need to continue with LA City College because it has to be 2 years of the same language, correct? And then they would not be eligible for the Spanish literature AP classes in high school.
They could take both.
They could take both, yeah.
So you could take 1 year of American Sign Language and 1 year of Spanish?
No, it does have to be the same to count as the graduation requirement. However, I think what she's saying is you could take the ASL after school if it's just something your child is interested, but still have Spanish be in their regular schedule.
In which case the ASL grades wouldn't count.
It still counts.
It's
As long as it's a college class, it still counts.
The high school GPA, even though it was taken in 7th and 8th.
That I'd have to check, but usually college classes do count as part of the GPA.
I'm a little confused about the sign language class for the summer. Is it done here or in West LA?
Okay, so it's not
Not
summer.
summer.
It's during the school year, after school, and it's offered after school 2 days a week. Yeah, okay, that's what we're doing right now.
We don't know what days yet.
Yeah,
It'll depend.
Yeah, we haven't completely confirmed, so we're waiting on that confirmation because that sometimes what happens is we offer a class and then they don't have a professor to teach it. So
But
we're
even
hoping
though
we
it's
do.
offered after school, it would be treated as a during school in that every single class meeting would be mandatory,
Yes.
attendance,
Yeah,
all of that.
let me just clarify. There's something called concurrent enrollment where a student can take high school and get high school and college credit for the same class. So with the American Sign Language 1 and 2, they would get credit as a college class through West LA or LACC, whichever one's going to teach it, and then they would also get it as a check off of that they completed the requirement of the LOT.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, are you going to be explaining all of this to the girls?
Yes.
Like, are they going to come home and they'll kind of
All of it to an extent. We're going to be mostly focusing on the math class with the
No,
girls.
I'm talking about the accelerated.
Yeah, we will.
Since,
The plan is
like
to
you're saying,
go.
it's a decision for them and the
Right,
parents.
right.
Do I need to go home and explain all this to my kid, or will she
No,
come home
they're
and-
going to get it in their math classes.
Today I'll be going to the math classes, but if they don't have math today, I'll be talking to them
On
on
Monday.
So,
Yeah.
I don't know which day your child has math, but I'll be going to all the math classes just to explain this is you have to meet with your parents, this is the option, you know, and that kind of thing. I probably won't go through all the A through G with them right now. But anyone in here who has raising 8th graders, we have 7th grade students. That's the meeting next week, where I'm going to just kind of go through this whole layout of here's the A through G, here's the high school, trajectory. You're welcome to come to that, even if you have a student that's not a rising 8th grader. But I just kind of want people to understand the trajectory, because some of the courses we're offering in our high school aren't offered anywhere else. So the AP Capstone, which is a research class that they can take in 11th and 12th grade, it's a 2-year project where they're doing their own individual research and they come out with a senior thesis. There's only I think 6 schools in LA Unified offering that. And then the biomedical technology, which is an option for elective option, it's only 3 in Southern California. So there's some things that we're offering that I know middle school parents aren't quite aware of yet. So I just want to be able to really be out front with these are the things that we're preparing your daughters in middle school to take in high school. And it's a very clear trajectory. That's why we're doing springboard curriculum in English. That's why we're doing Stanford history and history. It's why we're doing all these things that are very purposeful, so they're ready for that high level.
And that's one of the beautiful things about a lot of us are teaching both the middle school levels and the high school levels. So it's been really awesome to be able to teach the 7th grade class, because I know what they're going to need to know by the time they get to me in a couple of years. I know science, they're doing the same thing. I'm like purposely prepping them like, okay, I know my girls right now don't know how to do that. Let me make sure they know how to do this now, so I can say, hey, I taught you that. Like, I remember that. We did this, and this, and even just not just preparing them to be ready for me in high school, but we're doing like, I'm taking them some of the stuff like a little further. Like, yeah. So it's really cool to see how
I know
it's supposed to transition.
Some of the beginning stats that they're doing in 6th grade, I don't know about you, I didn't get that to college. So I'm like, wow, what are they doing?
That was my question. Are you already integrating the concepts of statistics within these topics?
Yeah, the new Common Core standards integrate statistics 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So, yeah, basically they are integrated into every level now, instead of, because they're realizing so many people aren't actually taking the class, and then no one's getting it. So now there is a little bit of statistics at every level.
Is there a accelerated science option? One of the things I've heard from my daughter is she doesn't find the science to be too challenging.
In high school, they can choose between advanced placement biology and biology.
But like right now, is there something
Yeah.
we can tell
Not
her?
right
No,
now,
or-
but
yeah, go ahead.
I would wait till she experiences 7th grade science to be concerned. I think
that curriculum
Yeah.
is very constraining in 6th grade, I have to say. It's their science, there's not a ton you can do with that to make it very exciting for students. I love that topic and it's really exciting to me, but for some girls, it's not like the most thrilling topic. Biology, where you're talking about your body and cells, and that is a little bit more appealing, which is our 7th grade curriculum. And they're consistently doing labs, and that teacher also teaches the advanced placement biology, so she knows what they need to have to get to her in 9th grade. So she's very purposely, which is again the great thing about having teachers that do middle school and high school, very purposely teaching, for instance, some chemistry concepts that are needed for AP Bio in the life science class for 7th grade. So, and it's very, very heavy lab, and they love it because it's so many labs.
I would speak to some 7th grade parents and see if they have any concerns that you might need to be aware of. But I think once she gets to 7th grade, she'll be good.
What's the timeline for making the decision on the accelerated math and electives and all of that? How does that work?
No, we didn't.
I don't think we talked about it either. We will have to get back to you on this. Probably we're going to be going in and programming. Ms. Chen, the counselor, and myself, are going to start going into classes and programming. Probably the sooner the better, just so that we know how many classes we need to have for accelerated math. Now, the electives will definitely change. We'll have some additions for next year because we're hiring 5 new faculty. So we're hoping that our music teacher will either do orchestra or choir as an elective. So we'll have that elective. So there's a couple of new electives that will come in for the middle school. And I think there's going to be a speech elective for middle school. So there's a couple of different things that some teachers are also kind of talking about. They're tired of teaching class that they've been teaching for 2 years, and they'd like to do, expand to something different. So there's going to be some more options for the electives. That normally is done later in the school year because we're still hiring. So once we hire the teachers, we can ask them, okay, so these are the things we need covered, but also what would you like to teach? And that's why I think that 7th period class is so successful, because girls get to choose, but also the teachers get to choose what they're teaching. And normally they're teaching something they have at least an interest in.
Picking up on that, I love that 7th grade elective. I said 7th period elective. Is it ever been discussed, or can you imagine, can you project, is it possible that there might be an opportunity to, or might be a framework where they do half a year in different disciplines? Because there's so many juicy, interesting topics. And I can just imagine a girl be like, robotics, yes, but the whole year, maybe not. I'll stick with math. And I feel like there's such an opportunity to give them a glimpse. And I would imagine that a half a year is enough time to get deep. So that's just like on my little personal wish list. And I was just wondering if that would ever be.
It's something I could definitely talk to the faculty about. I have to tell you, the faculty is pretty strong about not wanting to change at the semester. They feel like they want a year to really develop those skills. So particularly with robotics, it takes a while for the girls to learn that. And we're projecting having a team next year, so a competitive team with both high school and middle school. You can't stop in the middle and then start all over again with that. And
perhaps
same
some of
thing
them
with,
would be a full year commitment, maybe others could be.
Yeah, and again, it's something that it's a faculty decision, not my decision on that one, because it is something that they then have to lesson plan for and figure out how do I stop everything at the middle, at the middle, or restart with new kids, but also keeping some of the other kids that have already learned. So then you're teaching 2 different levels.
No, I hear you on that. It would have to be like this. These are half a semester,
right?
And you can mix,
and you can either
this
go
one.
up,
These 3 are full year. You
exactly. So that's something we can discuss, and I'm glad you brought it up because then I can say parents just asking.
It's just so juicy and wonderful, you know. It's so intriguing.
Just to know that they'll be here for a long time.
I hear
and
ya.
have many different opportunities to do things.
Hear ya.
Okay. As they find the things they love the most, they can get more involved in those things.
As far as a language in the middle school, basically we're saying that by taking it now, you're kind of freeing up room in your high school schedule. But there's no downside other than taking up those spaces and to just wait until high school to fulfill the language requirement if desired. Like you could take Spanish 1 and 9 and Spanish 2 and 10.
However, there's going to be less and less opportunities to do that as this group of middle school goes into high school, because the level of classes that they're taking in high school, there are so many required classes. So, for instance, exploring computer principles and AP computer science in 9th and 10th grade is a requirement for our school. So, it's taking up a space. English is a requirement. So it's like you have very few elective opportunities to play with in high school. In middle school, you have a lot more flexibility. So, that's why we're doing the option of music for Spanish in 7th grade. Our current 7th graders, most of them took Spanish, with the exception of the accelerated. Some of them took it as an elective. So all of them, we want them to get their second year because that's the other thing. You don't want to skip years with the language. So if you get that foundation and you skip a year, you're gonna have to really go back. Good question, so.
Along the same lines, I was just wondering with the whole ASL versus Spanish, is that going to be another option that parents and kids will get to weigh in before their schedules are finalized? In terms of the
It's American Sign Language is going to be it's an option that's kind of separate, so it's not going to be scheduled.
Yeah.
So what normally happens with the college classes is they have to go through a registration process, and then anybody in middle school, the parent, that's the one difference with high school. High school, we can register them here because they're old enough and they're in high school, they can sign off for themselves, but the parents have to actually go to the college and register their child if they're not in high school. So that happens usually about a month before the class is starting. And they don't usually start at the same time as we start school. So oftentimes it's maybe 3 weeks in.
So, but if your daughter was going to take American Sign Language instead of Spanish, would that be a discussion that we would have with the counselor or when they're
definitely with the counselor.
If the student does not take accelerated math, do they get to take both electives, math and Spanish? Does that work?
No. Everybody will only have an option for one of those for 7th grade.
Yeah, the only reason this year is their schedule. So that is going away for next year, and we're consolidating just into one period, which means they will have the exact same schedule as a student who is not in accelerated. Same options, same opportunities.
So our choices are regular math or accelerated math. That's one choice.
Yes.
The second choice is Spanish or music, maybe. Is that correct?
Limited space for Spanish. Remember what I said? We're still, our priority is high school.
It's high school.
So they could choose that as one of their 7th period electives if that's in the elective line next year. I don't know that it will be because I know we're offering AP Spanish language for our high school in that 7th period elective line. So
Okay, so whether it's music or Spanish, we're still talking about 7th period.
No. Okay.
That's what I want to know. What are our choices?
Okay, your choices really right now is accelerated math or non-accelerated math. That's it. That's for right now. Okay. As we move forward and we know how many spots are open for Spanish, we can open up Spanish for students that might be interested. So when we do the actual, this is just a choice for math or accelerated math right now. In about towards the end of April, beginning of May, the counselor and I will go through all the classes and say, these are your choices. Basically, everybody in 7th grade is going to have music, but if you are interested in taking Spanish 1 and we have spaces, we're going to allow you to put that in here so we can see how many students are interested.
Okay, so the default is music with possibly a Spanish option.
And again, this depends on, we're bringing in 100 girls in 9th grade and depends on what their needs are for the Spanish 1 or 2 or Spanish speakers.
There's 7th period, which has a host of options, which we'll talk about in another period.
And that will be when we go in and program. That's when we'll give them their options. So at the end of April, beginning of May, we'll give them their options for 7th grade for their 7th period. These rising 7th graders for their 7th period elective.
Just to lever off what Stephanie mentioned about 7th period, there seems to be a general not concern, but question about how to make sure that 7th period, since it does give the opportunity for students to be exposed to something very cool or something that's, let's say, more common, to make sure that the kids, if they're committing for a year, get to be in something that is different or not something that's naturally or more easily available. So I just know that I've heard that among the parents to understand, since it is a year commitment, that those elective options then are, that they are all truly unique, special, more of a stretch than where they would naturally go. Because I think what happens is then parents are frustrated or concerned that their kid, because they have a natural proclivity to X, went to X, even though Y will give them an exposure into something that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So I share that with you guys as you plant your seeds about 7th period.
Especially with the middle school, grades don't count, this is a time to go far afield. And for a girl who would maybe like, I never did try robotics, I don't think of myself as, well, that's the wrong example, because that would be a full year. But for that very reason, like this time, this is the time to really.
Yeah, try it out.
So I just share that with you in terms
And
of
I can
the
talk to the
options of
faculty
seventh grade.
about that. Even though I'm saying grades don't count, the content counts and the grades do count in overall, but in terms of high school transcript and college transcript is what I meant.
I didn't mean to overstate that point.
But I mean, a lot of the high school girls are in their 7th grade are taking G electives or other electives that count for college. So for instance, the film elective counts for college. So a lot of the choices for high school are actual college varying classes. So or the high school, but not necessarily the high school. Thank you all for coming and asking such great questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Yeah, exactly.